Alright, so coming up here is going to be changing an axle in an F10 BMW. This is a 2013 528 xDrive front driver's head axle. This is the first time I've done this, so it was a little unknown. I couldn't find any real information online of how to get things apart and what to do. I made a few mistakes or tried some things that didn't really work out. So as you'll see, the axle cannot pull the lower saddle of the strut. The strut goes around the axle shaft and attaches to the lower control arm. So I thought I could pull it out of the transfer case, out of the differential, and slide it out and through the saddle. That doesn't work. In hindsight, it probably would have been easier to undo the lower bolt on the strut, undo the lower ball joint on the lower control arm, and then loosen the pinch bolt on the bushing end of the control arm and let that control arm drop. And it would have been a little easier to do that. Getting the differential fill plug back in and out, it's in a really shitty spot. You gotta have small fingers and some good dexterity and tactile feel to get it in and out. Wasn't a whole lot of fun. And overall the job isn't too bad. On another note, there's a GKN axle available out there. I've seen some forum posts about it. For some reason, GKN currently seems to be putting the wrong inner boot on the shaft. So the shaft in its relaxed position is a little short. So you can buy a new boot and take the inner CV apart and put a new boot on it, and the axle works fine because they're really the same. It's just the boot is too short and it puts too much. When the shaft is fully extended in the car, there's too much tension on it and it wants to pull the axle out of the front diff. So that's what I had to do here. The boot was wrong when I got to do it, and somebody fixed it and put a new boot on it for me, so I didn't have to mess with all the grease and the mess. So everything worked out. Watch along and see what happens. $17mm hex. So this bolt has a spring that comes with it. Just as a note, the new axles do not come with a new bolt. So you gotta make sure you buy a new bolt when you buy your axle. So what you get is all this grease covering everything. Now we get the ABS sensor disconnected from the car. It goes up and around and through all this stuff and up into this little box. It's all full of dirt. So that's out of the way. Take the rotor off. I'm going to take this brake disc shield off just to make it easier to get to the bolts and everything on the tie rods. Just be careful you don't break these. Alright, we're going to start with taking the tie rod off. Once you get it loose, then you need to hold the shaft with a T40 Torx. And you can hold the nut or turn the nut. And these ball joints have a ball seat, so they're not pressed in, so you don't have to beat the hell out of them to get them out of the way. So now that might give us enough turning. And I think we can turn the strut, or the spindle, enough. And I think the axle might sneak out. I'm going to try it instead of taking all the other control arms off, but let's see what happens. Let's see if I turn it all the way. Looks like she'll sneak by, so I'm just going to pop the inner joint out of the differential. Here we are under the car. We got this big aluminum shield taken down and all the undersplash shit and all this bullshit back here. 400 little 8mm screws. So up in here you can see the back of the axle. Up in here. So I'm going to try a screwdriver and a pry bar and a hammer to try to drive that axle out of the transfer case. Alright, so I got her out of there. Let's see up in there or not. And now we're losing diff fluid, so we're going to top that off. Alright, it's loose out of the differential. Let's see if we can get this. So as you can see, they made this thing, excuse me for cursing, but that's what I'm doing, just tight enough. You know, this could have been a little thinner, maybe not. You can't sneak this by. You gotta take this thing off. It's an E14 Torx and a 14mm hex. Alright, and of course, it's kind of seized, the bolt's corroded in the hole. Similar thing happens on Volkswagens or Audis with this stupid type of suspension. Let's see if we can just give it a little. Light encouragement. It's pretty awesome. Starting to get some turns out of it now. You gotta be careful when you do this. It's not a good idea, but it's what I got. Just spread this like this. There, that should give us plenty of room. So, we got room, got the axle pulled out, but it won't come through the hole in the bottom of the strut, so you have to disconnect the strut from the lower control arm, which I was hoping to avoid, but we're going to try that, see if I can just take the bolt out and get enough room to drop it by. If not, then we're taking that lower control arm off, loosening the inner bolt on the bushing. Just more disassembly. I mean, it's getting pretty ridiculous anyway, but it shouldn't be this hard to change an axle. Alright, so that's off. That doesn't do much for us. That's one way to half-ass it. I'm going to try to slip this in. Gets it under the... Lift it up. Mm-hmm. So you got to fill the differential with fluid again and top it off, or do a fluid change when you pull the axle, because you do lose fluid. To get to the fill plug is kind of a bitch. It is in here, over there, and it's right there next to the axle. You have to get in with an extension, a universal joint, and a 14mm hex. And having somebody to help really works out. Alright, we've got it all back together. Now you got to tighten this nut. From what I can tell, it goes to 150 foot-pounds, and then you turn it 90 degrees. So we'll start with a torque wrench, and we'll go to 150. There's 150. Now we're going to go 90 degrees. So mark there, and we'll mark over here. Yeah, 150, 90 degrees is a lot. So we're going to use a jack handle. There we go. And she's tight.